My name is Simon Grant. I'm the CEO of Scibase, which is a Swedish company, a Swedish startup working within medical devices. Essentially, what we do within the medical device industry is we make products that can be used to either diagnose or treat clinical diseases or situations. And as a company, we are absolutely one of the first companies in the world to use AI in a diagnostic product. We're definitely the first within dermatology on a global basis, and we're for sure one of the first companies to have an AI-based product approved by the FDA. In fact, I would say we're one of a dozen or a half a dozen. So it's extremely uncommon for a small company to be up there with all the big companies. You know, you always want to work with something that changes the way things are done, you know, for the better, of course, you know. So I think all of us who work in this business, if you can make a better way of doing something, or a way that gives more insight, that's the ultimate goal of everyone who works in this industry. And so when we look at this and we look at what's the potential of this technology, it's to provide a completely new insight into all of these diseases, these very common diseases. And I'm sure it's not going to answer all questions. I know that for sure. But it's going to provide an additional piece of information that helps clinicians do a better diagnosis, a better management, and sometimes even predict the development of disease so we can avoid it. And for patients, the ability to kind of have insight into their own condition, so that all of a sudden they're not having to go to the doctor every time they want to find something out, but they can kind of follow their own disease over time in their home. And then maybe combined with other AI tools, that they combine their home measurements together with our tools to help them better manage their disease. I think that's what we aim for. So in Sweden, as an example, we have about 20% of all children and between 3 and 8% of adults have experienced eczema. It's atopic dermatitis is another name for it. And eczema is actually, it's a name for a group of diseases, but even so, there are many children that are affected by eczema. And myself, I had 2 of my 3 children were affected chronic eczema when they were young, repeated time and time again, and that's very, very common. And often children grow out of it, but in many cases, eczema is a lifelong condition that affects the quality of life of many people. And if you look over the last 30 years, it's been really an explosion. They're growing, and they're growing rapidly. And there are many theories about why this is the case, but one of the professors that we work very closely with, he believes that an important factor in this is the chemicals that are used today in industry and in the home. You know, everything from dishwashing detergents to the detergents you use when you wash your clothes. Your whole skin, there are layers that protect between your body and the outside world. Now, they do 2 things. They stop water leaving the body, okay, and they stop allergens, irritants, bacteria from coming into the body. So they're a real barrier. And we are specifically concerned about the 2 outermost layers of this barrier. They're what's called the stratum corneum and the stratum granulosum. You don't really need to know more than that, but these outer layers are very, very important in how the skin functions. And when there are defects in those layers, that's when you get problems. So that's the skin barrier. Until now, it's been very difficult to explore the barrier, to examine the barrier outside of a laboratory. As it turns out, the Swedish invention, a method called transepidermal water loss, that has been for 20, 30 years, has been the only way you can really measure the barrier without cutting a piece out and taking a look at it. You know, no one really wants to do that. So that method, it works, but it's something that is really susceptible to a lot of artifacts and challenges, so it's never really used clinically. It's used in the lab. And so what we've found is a way to do a similar kind of measurement, but to do it out in the real world, and that's both in the clinic, but even potentially in the home, so that we give for the first time the ability through Nevisense to examine the status of your barrier and to look at changes in the barrier over time. So what we do with this product is we send the electrical signals into the skin, 10 seconds, and we do 700 measurements in that 10 seconds. And we take all that electrical, impedance information, and we analyze it using a neural network. And that neural network gives us the probability, or tells us what the likelihood is that the barrier is compromised. And that's exactly what we do. So it's a combination of the electrical signals going through the skin, detecting how they change, and then analyzing that with the neural network to give a clinical kind of relevant information. When children are born, when they're born or soon after they're born, you can see which children have a compromised barrier, skin barrier. If you can get those children when they're born, maybe after 1 month or 2 months, measure their skin barrier and say, this child has a higher risk that they're going to develop both eczema, food allergies, and then you manage those children in a different way so that they can reduce the risk that they're going to develop this. And if you look at all of these diseases together, they are an enormous burden on the healthcare system. Asthma, eczema, food allergies. Food allergies is 5 or 6% of all people. Allergic rhinitis is 20%. Eczema is between, as I said, 3 and 20%, depending on the age. So these are all really common diseases that take a lot of resources, and there is a lot of quality of life challenges for the people that suffer them. When I do a new measurement, I take a measurement, I send that new data, set to the model. The model interprets it based on how it's been trained, and then gives a clinically relevant answer. We don't tell it the answers. We don't hard code the answers. We give it information, and we tell it what the relationship with that information is. And based on that, the neural net builds a kind of a series of paths, so that when it gets a new set of information, it can say, okay, based on how I've been trained, this new information gives me this answer. The thing about Peltarion platform is that it's graphical, and it takes care of a lot of the kind of mechanics of AI. AI can be challenging, really challenging, to actually get real world results and to take data and essay. So what Peltarion does, it takes a lot of that kind of that tricky stuff, and it just handles it automatically. So you can do things instead of having to be programming, in matrix operations, which is the basis of most AI. All that is handled by an interface, and you work with the interface and you work with the data, rather than worrying too much about exactly how you are doing the building the model. That's handled by Peltarion. So this has enabled us as a company to take multiple data sets, try different data sets very quickly, sometimes in a day or two, to say, okay, is there something there? Is there not? Should we go down this path, or should we go down? And I haven't seen anything similar to Peltarion in this respect. For us as a small company, we have to be really fast, we have to be first, we have to be agile, and we have to be able to change our direction, quickly if we see that this is, you get data, clinical data, you look at it, you think this is the direction, you get some more data and you realize, no, it's not. So you have to be able to kind of turn on a dime, rebuild, take another approach,